in forever. You could have a forever slave. It means all the days of his life. In Exodus 27:21, Israel was to bring olive oil to the tabernacle lamp forever. Well, the tabernacle doesn't exist anymore. The temple doesn't exist anymore. The menorah, the lamp doesn't exist anymore. That just meant for and long, long in the future. And so you have in just these handful of things. Leviticus 7:34, the Old Testament sacrifices were to be forever, just until God changed the plan. Joshua 4 and verse 7, the stones from the Jordan were a memorial forever. Nobody knows where those stones are. They came in, crossed the Jordan, and set up stones. They said, man, I want you to have this in memorial. And that's great. But that was long, for years or hundreds of years, whatever it was. Ecclesiastes 1:10, he said, you see, this that is said is new. It has already existed. Versions will say, for ages past. This is the same word, forever. And that's what it means, just off in the distant mists. And so think about what happens to all of our lives. One generation comes and another generation goes, but the earth remains. I remember thinking as a young man, and I became aware of, wow, here's politics and war and whatnot, and I thought, why didn't my parents' generation fix it? I don't know. The next generation says, well, Paul, why didn't you guys fix it? We don't know how to fix it. The thing's a mess. And we say, hey, this is the way we ought to go, and the other people go the opposite way. But I tell you what, my generation is passing away. We have little kids and babies, and they'll have that opportunity. Can you make this world a better place? Will you fulfill your purpose in life? So in Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 5, he says, the sun rises and the sun sets and hastens to the place where it was again. There's a certain sameness to kind of day after day. And I thought about individuals like Carol Walker, who's confined to a bed in a rehab facility. What's the difference of one day to the next? It's just day after day. Think about if you have no hope in life, the relationships that you had are all lost or gone or whatever. And it's just one day succeeds the next. And he says, blowing toward the south and then turning toward the north, the wind continues swirling along on its circular courses. There's a repetitiousness in life, in all natural things. So think about this. Mathematicians say, across all the distance of time and space, a few atoms that danced inside Christ's lungs are dancing inside yours right now. Well, you think about what happens is you take in oxygen and nitrogen and breathe out carbon dioxide. The plants take that in. The animals eat them. You eat the animals. It gets combined and recombined. But some of the individual atoms, they say mathematically, are inside you. I look at that and I say, that's amazing. This world is just what it is. But we can make it better in our lives. What's the meaning of life? Ecclesiastes 1:8, and all things are wearisome, and man's not able to tell it. Well, I don't think all things are weary. Well, let's try this. He says, the eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Do you ever get to a spot where, let's try this on for size. You've already seen lots of beautiful things. Why don't you just give it up? I mean, you've already seen things, so move on to something else. Wait a minute, I like seeing beautiful things. What about a peacock as it's fanned its tail feathers? Wow, it's just beautiful. Well, Paul, you've seen that before. Aren't you tired of it? No, that's really pretty. How about a little child and look like Asian from the eyes? It's just beautiful little kid. Well, you've seen other kids before. You don't need to see any more. That's how moms you feel about your kids, right? Junior, I saw you last week. I don't need to see you. Check in on me when you're 18. No, we just love them to bits. Or it can be marine life and tropical fish and coral reef. Or I came across this one, the beautiful butterfly, translucent wings. Well, okay, after you've seen one butterfly, you've seen them all. It's not that way. We are interested. We are curious people. And so it's never just enough. We always want the next thing. Well, you've already heard almost everything there is to hear. Why do you want to hear stuff one more time, like your favorite music? You've heard it before. Yeah, but it says something to you, whatever your favorite music is. Now, Ben has a style of music, a genre that appeals to him. Man, it doesn't say much to me, and that's jazz. You like jazz. I go, man, these guys don't even have notes. I don't know what they're doing there, because I'm a word person. I want it to talk to me. I want it to tell a story, and such as this. And so as we look at these things, it may be, do you like children laugh? Little kids, they giggle. Oh, man, that is so cool. Or hear people say, I love you. You say, oh, look, man, you told me that 50 times in the last, I don't want to hear it anymore. People don't do that. We're interested in what is the message? Or you did a great job. I so appreciate it. Ben, you did good with that clicker. You caught on, say, okay. And so everybody appreciates being recognized for having done a really good job, whatever it is. In the book of Ecclesiastes, in 1:10, he says, is there anything of which one might say, see, this is new? He said, already it has existed for ages that were before us. Well, I thought of that as challenging. I thought, well, is that really so? Well, think about this. What about our ability in nuclear power and atomic bombs? Well, the reality is that's not a new thing. Stars, that's what a star does when it goes supernova. It's an atomic explosion. And this graphic is said to be a picture of a star having gone nova. I go, wow, how beautiful that is. But it's not a new thing. It's been going on forever. It's not. We just found out, oh, well, here's how you could do it here on Earth. How about men flying? Well, and I thought about the squirrel suits that you see. Boy, isn't that awesome? You'd all like to get in one of those things, jump off a cliff, go gliding around things. Or I saw a couple, a husband and wife, jumped out of an airplane over Antarctica. Oh, yeah, that'd be my first choice. Not. And so, but yeah, they're flying, or just being in an airplane and flying, or whatever it is. Well, the reality is that's interesting to us, and we're learning ways we can do it. But isn't that what Elijah did? And the fiery chariot and went up in a whirlwind, or the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 12 and verse 2 says, I know a man was taken up to the third heaven, whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know. He said, man, I was there, but I can't tell you how all those pieces worked. And it's fascinating to us, but it's really not new. How about harnessing electricity? Wow, here's, the kite and the string and all this and that, and the reality is that's what you do with your cell phones. And then I thought about how old cell phones are. Well, they're not nearly as old as some of these things, but did any of you kids ever have 2 soup cans and a string tied between? Anybody else ever did that? Yeah, about 5 of us did. Well, the reality is the Mayans had the same thing, 1200 AD with 2 gourds and a piece of twine. People have always been doing these things. Can we communicate over distances? Can we harness electricity? Yes. And God did in a number of places. Deuteronomy 33 and verse 2, and Sinai and Paran and others. How about hovercraft and space vehicles? Oh man, that's brand new. God already had those things, and in apocalyptic language in Ezekiel chapter 1 and verses 4 through 28. It talks about some of these things. The one part you'll be familiar with is the wheel within a wheel. And each wheel had eyes all around it. And there was an angel beside each one. And wherever they wanted to go, it just went. That we're thinking, hey, you know what, now we can have a little sensor on our head and get the certain things to react. They do this somewhat with individuals that have had military injuries or birth defects, that in order to get a particular prosthesis to work, sometimes they'll hook up this little sensor. And, well, the reality is, here is the picture of God on a firmament of crystal, so like the platform of a chariot, and the wheels below, and is thrown above, and lightning and fire going out from it. Just God showing, I can go anywhere. I see everything. I know exactly what to do and what God's people need and the adversary deserves. And so the reality is, we have amazing things we come across, but it's not brand new. We're just learning how to use it in one little way. And then Ecclesiastes 1:12, he says, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. Now, I could have introduced the authorship in verse 1, but I thought I'll wait to this point. Here's some things we find. He talks about the titles and the position that helps us understand who he is. He said, I am king, and he is king over the Davidic line, that's in chapter 1, verse 1, and he speaks of himself as the preacher, the Koheleth, one who convenes an audience, and he reigns in Jerusalem. Now, you had, in the Old Testament times, you had a number of kings from the Davidic line ruling there. But he says in chapter 1, verse 12, he is king over Israel in Jerusalem. Now, you may or may not know some of Old Testament history, but God's people came in, conquered the land, they had judges, and then they got kings, and then they got the arguing, I'll say, and divided. And you had Israel in the north and Judah in the south. And you had a different kingly line in each one of them. But if you were king over Israel in Jerusalem, that would be in the United Kingdom. If you're in the United Kingdom, there were only 3 kings that were king in the United Kingdom. That's Saul, David, and Solomon. And then he says in verse 16, he increased in wisdom more than all that were before him. Well, the ones before him would be Saul and David. And chapter 2, 4 through 9, he was a great builder and richer than his predecessors. That would fit Solomon. The evidence points to Solomon's authorship about 950 BC. And he's saying, I have an opportunity to watch life and how people interact. And let's talk about what's really of value. What's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life? In 1:14, he said, I have seen all the works which men have done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after wind. Well, I think about that, and I thought, well, I've done some fun things. I'm not terribly gifted at it, but I had a great little 68 Ford Mustang, and I had it restored 3 times. Where's it now? That's a piece of junk. Campbell soup cans are gone or whatever. It just wouldn't stay. And I had other vehicles I'd build up, and they're nice, but there's not a permanence to them. How about this? World War I was said to be, by Orson Welles, the war to end all wars. Man, once you had, World War I, you don't have to worry about any more wars. We're safe. No, that wasn't exactly true. We had World War II and Korea and Vietnam and Gulf War and Afghanistan. It was a nice idea, but we got into Vietnam and we solved all their problems. No. You got into Iran and Afghanistan and solved all their problems. No, just frustrating. People lost their lives, did the best they could, but it was still not sufficient. Now, how about this? The spread of nuclear weapons has made us a safer world. There's 9 countries that got them. And so, man, you get, like Washington State Power Supply. We got all our nuclear. Oh, no. Isn't that the plan we were going to do? And they had such big foul-ups, they quit doing it because they spent a lot of money on these things before they had it all figured out. So now Russia, China, North Korea, and Pakistan, India, Israel, France, United Kingdom, USA all got them. Thousands of them. Man, we are so much safer now. Somebody presses a button and everything just gets blown to bits. My goodness. How about this? Let's defund the police and we have safer streets. We're safe from the police. Yeah, people roll their eyes. Yep. And then they complain, well, I'm having problems up here. Can you send some police? There isn't any to send to you. Maybe it's not a good idea to defund the police. And just this morning, I was doing some additional research on this. And there's been a movement. We can solve a lot of problems. And probably would solve a lot of problems and create a whole lot more in a different area. We could decriminalize drug use. Say, use anything you want, and it's okay, because the argument would go, we've had a war on drugs for 32 years, and we've not solved the problem and are continuing to battle the war. In fact, in the last 10 years, there's been over a 20% increase in drug use. So maybe the solution is, let's not make it criminal. Whatever you want to do, shoot up, use crack, anything, and be fine. It would be basically lawful, but certainly not criminal. And think what it would do for you if you decriminalized drug use. It reduces the number of arrests and people you got poked in jail. Isn't that true? Yeah. Now they're all over the streets doing their stuff. Maybe that's not a good idea. It improves public expenditures, relieves some of the finances. You don't have to build extra prisons and jails and staff. Why? Because you're not poking them in there. Yeah, but what happens when they're doing the crimes on the outside? I said, no. Actually, it improves police relationships with citizens. Hey, fella, how you doing? All right, how's the family? We're doing good. Wait a minute. Yeah, because they're not arresting them. They're not chasing. It doesn't matter anymore. And they said, and they'll be in, for those that are problematic, so if you really got, you're really addicted, there's incentives to get therapy. We got people 2 blocks away living in tents. Hey, how would you like some therapy? Generally, that's not where they are. And so, whatever their motives are, how they're going about it is not going to solve the problem. In Ecclesiastes 1:15, what is crooked cannot be straightened, and what's lacking cannot be counted. He said, now, from the standpoint of just trying to solve the world's problems, what would it take to fix, right? The corruption and incompetency in governments. Well, Jim Hester, why don't you just run for government and fix it? He hangs his head. Now, where would you start with all of that? How about climate change or deforestation, war, starvation, disease, crime, abuse, neglect, homelessness, poverty? What Jesus said in Matthew 26:11, the poor you'll always have with you. Why? Because there's differences in capability, circumstance, desire. You have all this stuff. It's always going to have a degree of that. So let me ask you this. Since we just looked over a dozen different social and natural problems, does you knowing that the problems exist make you happier? You go, no, it doesn't make me happier at all. Does it relieve the grief and the pain? No. And Solomon says that. Within increasing wisdom is increasing grief. Increasing knowledge is increasing pain. Think about this. Weren't you happier at 2 years old than now? At 2, man, life is good. They feed you. You don't have to go to work every day. They carry you around or whatever the thing is. Well, yeah, except that as you grow up, we're expected to take our places in humanity and lead and bless others. And so from a believer's standpoint, what's the answer? What's a person's purpose in life? Your purpose in life is to honor God. Colossians 1:16 says, all things were made by him and for him. We glorify him. People say, you must serve a great God. You're familiar with Matthew 22:37 when asked what's the greatest law? He said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. He said, you just pour yourself into it 100%. Ecclesiastes 12:13. Solomon gets to that point at the end of this book, who says, fear God and keep his commandments. He said, you want to enjoy life. You really want to be productive. You want things to work together. He said, there's the book. There's the compass. That's the direction to go. And then Matthew 22:39, the second is like unto it. You love your neighbor as yourself. So how do you treat people around you? Do you build them up? Do you encourage them? Do you help them take that next step? They don't really know how to go about it, but they see, a lot of times people look at you and say, man, you guys got it all together. I say, we do not have it all together. We just happen to be going in the right direction together, but we help each other. And so Daniel 12 and verse 3, those that lead many to righteousness will shine like the stars forever. So there's our message. There's our purpose. We're here to glorify God and encourage one another. And as we do that, I thought of, and I appreciated Paul Mitchell's statement about the Lord's Supper. Now, we had a different upbringing as kids. See, a more religious family, and mine was totally irreligious. When I became a Christian, I never saw that as, do this in remembrance of me, as anything negative. It's like if I knew I was going to die and I've got my grandfather's ring and I said, I want you to have this. And every time you do it, remember me. We were friends. We had that great relationship. And I want you to know I'm always with you. Well, that's what God is trying to tell us. And so if you're here this morning and you say, I could use the prayers of the saints, I've been struggling. Or you're not a Christian, you say, I want to serve God. I want to have that kind of faith and confidence. I'm willing to not only believe in him, to repent of my sins. I'm willing to confess Christ's name and be buried in the waters of baptism. What a joy it is once you know your purpose here in life. We're going to be singing song number 766, Whiter Than Snow. If you would like to turn your life over to his control and be whiter than snow, you can let us know by coming forward. Ben, why don't you lead us in song?